Hard to believe that this year is almost over. Hard to believe that we are halfway through the 2020s. But all that time rushing by doesn't stop Flash. Nothing stops Flash, or prose poetry, or nonfiction, or any other form of writing you like. And tonight, FBOMB is proud to bring you a group of wonderful writers for your listening pleasure. I'm Francine Witte, your host, coming to you from the heart of Manhattan in New York City. And right now, I'm going to warm up the Zoom waves with a short micro. And I wanted to say that this micro was written in a workshop that I took with Kathy Fish, who's here in the audience, so I want to give her a shout out. And it's called Luli Wants to See His Nose. Not in the mirror, not in between his uncle's years ago fingers, not running all over town like Gogol, just something he could hold in his hands for once in his life. He tried last month to see his heart. After so many years, he wanted to see the actual scars on it, the ones that were put there by bad love and poor choices. Luli slipped a rusty Gillette down his hairy chest, but couldn't make it through. Besides, Louise was making pork chops for dinner. Luli wants to see his nose because, frankly, he doesn't trust the mirror anymore. How it has sunk him into an old man. These days, all the mirror shows him is a tinsel of whisker and a nose that has grown longer, wider. Luli can't help but wince when he sees this. Is it possible for a nose to grow this much in a few short years since childhood? Louise's nose has also grown, but he understands because his wife is an old lady. He appreciates her wisdom when she says, "You don't have your 5-year-old nose your whole life, do you?" But he needs to see his nose for himself, and this is the morning he's going to do it. He will look into that liar of a mirror. Maybe I will let the razor slip. Maybe I will hold my nose in my own hand. Maybe I will not worry anymore about my own death coming for me. Thank you. Going to switch it to speaker. Okay. So now we're going to start with our readers. And first up is Laura Weiss. Laura Weiss is a fiction writer and journalist with work in or forthcoming in South Florida Poetry Journal, JMWW, Flash Boulevard, Bright Flash Literary Review, 5 on the 5th, 10 by 10, 10 by 10 Flash, the New York Times, and Interior Design, among others. She was also a Virginia Center for Creative Arts Fellow and an adjunct journalism professor at NYU. Laura Weiss.
Thank you, Francine. Excuse me. I'm going to read a short piece called Daughter Witch. After the cops call again, pain razors through my chest. I dial 911. The ambulance carries me past a witness tree where a witch perches in the midnight branches. The cops are after my daughter. There was a fight with a teacher about a grade. Her knife plowed into his spongy stomach. Puff, my daughter crawled through a window. Poof, she was gone. When she was 5, she pinched nickels from my purse. The cat ate them, she said. I smelled her lie. When she was 10, diamond studs vanished from my jewelry box. It's the witch's trick, she said. She sits in the tree outside my window. I heard her darkness bellow. When she was 15, the cops, in 2 tight suits, arrested her for dealing cocaine. They tracked mud into my living room, left behind the smell of wet earth. My daughter is Satan's cleaver, hacking at my heart. After my daughter killed Mr. Milhouse, she vanished into the woods. Now the cops are closing in. They say she chopped off her hair. They say she dyed it orange. But that girl can't be my girl. She hates orange, the flinty smell of marigolds, the leer of Halloween pumpkins, the pulpy breakfast fruit pocked with pits. The ambulance pulls up to the hospital, the siren roaring a rusty refrain. Orderlies deposit me in a hospital room 3 floors above Mr. Millhouse's drawer in the morgue. The orderlies whisper, "She's the mother of the teacher murderer." Through the open window, the sky unfolds, rough like tree bark. I pull the bed covers over my head. The surgeon waltzes in. He must mistake my weeping for fear. "You need a catheterization," he says. "Don't worry, we do them all the time." I sit up. I need two, I need 2 hearts fixed, I said. Mine and my daughter's. As soon as she comes home, do hers. The doctor taps on a keyboard, and when he looks up, his eyes pulse blue neon, like my bedside beeping machine. "What are you talking about?" he asks. He doesn't see the nimbus of orange float through the open window. He doesn't hear me call out. The end.
Oh, thank you so much, Laura.
You're welcome.
Where can we find more of your work? Do you have a website, or can we follow you somewhere on Twitter or Blue Sky?
Excuse me. You can follow me on Blue Sky. That's probably, yeah, just follow me on Blue Sky. That would be great.
Okay, well, we look forward to reading more from you. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Laura Weiss. Thank you for being here at FBOMB
Thank
tonight.
you for having me.
Okay, next, we're going to hear from Joanna Theiss. She's a writer living in Washington, D.C. Her short stories, poems, and interviews have been published most recently in Stanchion, Your Impossible Voice, and the Master's Review. Along with writing, Joanna likes to pretend that she's competing in the Winter Olympics while ice skating. I hear you, Joanna. Joanna Theiss.
Thank you, Francine. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I'm going to read a story that was published originally at McQueen's Quinterly, and it's called A Screw. Jane finds herself in the fasteners aisle, though she is looking for glass cleaner. She is about to wheel her cart around when she sees him. Tom, who she met in the basement bathroom of Avalon after accidentally spilling a beer down his back. Tom, whose fingers were grooved from the steel strings of his bass, who made art out of plastic water bottles, whose roommate was the lead singer of a punk band called The Runs. Tom, who brushed aside her apologies for the spilled beer, saying he was looking for an excuse to talk to her anyway. Tom, whose fingers were rough, but who kept his lips smooth with dabs from a miniature jar of Vaseline, who ever so gently ground his pelvis into Jane on the dance floor, then asked permission to stick his hand down her pants in the taxi on the way to her dorm, where Jane's friends gawked at his sleeve of tattoos and sighed in corners about Jane's new townie boyfriend. Tom, whose clothes haven't changed, Converse, black jeans, band t-shirt, who still smells like smoked cigarettes, whose right earlobe bears the mark of a long ago piercing. Tom, who is inspecting the thread on a 6-inch screw. Tom, Jane says. Tom turns around, still holding the screw, only he's not smiling. He's saying, sorry. Sorry, perhaps, for how they broke up in a crowded Chinese restaurant on New Year's Eve 5 minutes before 2002 for reasons Jane can't remember now. It's okay, Jane promises. She came in the hardware store for glass cleaner, but she needs Tom more than Windex. In her apartment, they will reenact the night they met, only in reverse. It will be Tom pouring a beer down Jane's back, pouring it so it soaks her bra and wets her waistband and drips into her socks, and they will tumble into their old rhythms. Only this new thing will be better than before, because Jane will no longer treat Tom like he is a diversion from the white-collar dirtballs who are her destiny. Jane will introduce Tom to her 2 tabbies, who will press their noses into their naked torsos, and Jane will call into work to spend all of tomorrow and the next day, just like this, with Tom, as if the last 22 years never happened. No, it's not. My name's Jason, and I don't know you, he says. And Tom, Jane's Tom, dissolves. In his place, another middle-aged guy in a Misfits t-shirt. Blue eyes instead of Tom's brown, and now that she's noticing, a hairier neck, thinner lips, and not a single tattoo. Back in her apartment, Jane opens her laptop, ignoring the cat's impatience for their dinners. If Tom had been Tom, she tells them, you'd have to wait a lot longer. Jane looks for Tom the way nature intended, in the privacy of her living room, in the anonymity of a Google search, fumbling around in her memory to come up with Tom's last name and any details that might increase her chances of locating the right one this time. Once she's reasonably sure she has, she'll send him a message. She wants to know if he remembers her and if he, like Jason from the hardware store, is looking for a screw. Thanks.
That's wonderful. I love that last line of that last piece. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Where can we find more of your work? You have a website or can we follow you?
I do. I'll put it in the chat, and I've migrated also to Blue Sky with the same handle, so I'll put that in there too.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Always nice to see you. And I wanted to just mention, I always like to do the Ed Sullivan thing. I hope everybody remembers who Ed Sullivan is, or else I'm going to feel like I'm 100 years old. But anyway, he would stop sometimes and go, here's who's in the audience. So I like to give a shout out just like that to some of the people who have taken the time out of their evenings, or in some cases the next day, to be here, to spend the time listening to good writing. Because, really, we know that you could be elsewhere doing something else, but you chose to be here. And I always like to say you're here because you're beautiful. You're beautiful. You like to read. You like to appreciate words and so on. And you're beautiful because you're here. And I really mean that. Okay. Thank you. And some of the people here, Nod Gosh, who I believe is in New Zealand, where it's tomorrow, right? Lee Good, nice to see you, Nod. Lee Goodman, Betsy Woodman, Francine, another Francine. I like that. Francine Fielkoff, Nancy Wadler, Kathy Fish, who I mentioned before, Ellen Azarin, Rona Weinberg, V. Sessling, Mona Malarski, Lynn Wagner, Elaine Goldman, Elaine Nye, Beth Winehouse, Randy Weiss, Andy Simmons. I hope I didn't forget anybody. But thank you so much for being with us tonight. All right. Next, we're going to hear from Swetha Amit. Swetha Amit, I'm sorry. Swetha Amit is the author of 2 chapbooks, Cotton Candy from the Sky and Mango Pickle in Summer. An MFA graduate from the University of San Francisco, her works appear in Hag, Doors Ajar, Flash Fiction Magazine, Oh Yes Review, 30 West After Images, Gone Lawn, etc. Her stories have been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net. Swetha Amit.
Thank you, Francine, and thank you for organizing this. Really wonderful to be amidst great writers I admire. And thank you all for showing up. It really means a lot. So today I'm going to be reading a piece about an earthquake, since California experienced an earthquake yesterday. And the piece was published in Hag Journal. It's called The Floor Beneath My Feet. It starts as a rumbling. I look outside thinking it's thunder. The ground is bone dry. The clear black sky is studded with stars. Then my bed begins to shake, like some invisible force rattles from under it. I get off my shaking bed, switch on the light, peer under it. There is nothing there. Our 2-bedroom house continues to shake as though tossed by a wave. I hear the books falling on the floor, spoons, glasses, and plates toppling from the kitchen shelves. The couches and cupboards make a creaking noise. My heart thumps loudly as though I have run a marathon. I quickly gather my ID card, house keys, and car keys. As I stumble through the hallway, I bump into my husband. He has been sleeping in the spare room for the past week. The wooden floor beneath us is threatening to crumble at any moment. A loud crash startles us. Our wedding photo, taken 4 years ago, lies on the floor, surrounded by shards of glass. We lock eyes, a cold silence hanging between us that had become all too familiar in the past few weeks. Ever since I discovered his affair with an ex after a drunken night at a work conference, ever since he learned about my growing proximity with a male colleague, which led to a few intimate dinner meetings. I find myself reminiscing about a time before this turbulent phase when our evenings were spent at the local beach bars, swaying to the rhythm of live music. The air was filled with the aroma of fancy cocktails and grilled lobsters. When we would watch the sunset at the beach, relishing the salty smell of waves and that sand tickling under our feet. Those days when our love was vibrant, our laughter infectious, and our future seemed promising with his career as an interior designer. It had all gone wrong somewhere. I wonder whether it was our frequent arguments about his family's pressure to start one of our own, or that time when I was denied a promotion at work that made me sink into depression for days, when I accused him of not being understanding. The ground quakes again, this time with a ferocity that sends us scrambling out of the front door. Our neighbors, clad in their underwear, stand in shock outside their homes. I watch our house convulse as if seized by a violent fit. The sound of sirens, distant at first, grows louder, a cacophony of impending doom. Then, almost a few minutes later, the shaking subsides. Everything becomes eerily still. We step inside our home cautiously. The floor has a crack. The curtains are ripped down. I am unsure how long it would take to fix everything right. Would we come out of this catastrophe unscathed? Then my husband takes my hand hesitatingly. Hand in hand, we enter our wrecked home. Remnants of cracks would still be visible. At this moment, I'm just relieved to be given the possibility of a second chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Swetha. Lovely reading. Where can we find more of you? Where can we buy your books, etc.?
Yeah, I'll just put in my website on the chat so people can find more of my work and also links to my chapbooks. Yeah. And you can also find me on Blue Sky and Twitter. Yeah.
I know everybody's moving over to Blue Sky. It's been a real party over there. Well, thank you for being here with us tonight at FBOMB, Swetha. It was nice to see you. Thank you so much. All right, next is Mikki Aronoff. Mikki Aronoff lives in New Mexico, where she writes tiny stories and advocates for animals. God bless you. She has stories in Best Microfiction 2024 and Best Small Fictions 2020. Mikki Aronoff.
Thanks, Francine, and thanks for hosting. And I've just been harkening back to my 9 years living in San Francisco with my share of unsettling earthquakes. I have to get over that. I'm going to read a short micro that I wrote in one of Meg's 6-sentence workshops, and it was just published in Westwood by Amanda Saint. It's called Frankie's Moving Day. I'm the only one left who still calls my Uncle Frankie, who will listen to his mournful tallies as he counts on the fingers of his only hand the people and body parts lost to battle, to self-immolation by all manner of drugs, to sickness and health, he adds, his best buddy having died of a heart attack while weightlifting, to forgetfulness and to work injuries. Frankie, too close to that rip blade at the sawmill, in him so young, having lied about his age to get work, his mother sick, his father down by drink, 7 siblings jostling for bread. I clean a week's worth of stained mugs from his sink, pack two in a box. I feel like a tangle of seaweed snagged on a chain link fence. He yawps, words drawing out like a 78 record losing speed, while signaling he'd prefer his toast slathered with margarine on both sides. Thank you. He's Mister to the boy next door, Frankie to the visiting nurse, to the neighbor who drops off his mail, then rushes away, to the realtor who's listed his home. But to me, he's still Frankie, who tap danced to the radio, who sang silly songs, who tousled my hair when I skinned my knees, who still says, chin up, and calls me Buttercup, smiling every time. I rumple what hair he has left on his head, scraggly as dried up scallion roots, and his eyes leak like spigots in need of washers when he asks me what I think they will call him. Thank you.
Beautiful reading, Mikki. And that was really a beautiful reading.
Thank you.
Yes. You know, I wanted to also say that I've turned the captions on so you can read along if anybody wants to put their captions on. Read along as you're listening. I find that very helpful because I find that I like to see the words as well as listen to them. And sometimes the words go by very quickly and it's hard to really savor them as much as possible. So thank you, Mikki. So where can we find some more of your work, Mikki? I know you're all over the place these days.
Well, I'm actually only in one place. I'm a bit of a dinosaur and I just use Facebook. I don't have the bandwidth to explore other social media platforms.
Great.
Or if someone doesn't have Facebook, they can just use Google. That works fine.
Always works. Yeah, we should all Google ourselves, you know? So it's kind of fun. Sometimes it's a little disturbing. But thank you, Mikki. Mikki Aronoff, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for hosting this.
My pleasure. Next, we're going to hear from Andrea Marcusa, who's kind of helping me out here, keeping an eye on keeping us safe, you know. While I'm talking away, she's making sure that nobody's lurking and trying to get in here that shouldn't be here. So, Andrea Marcusa, so thank you for that, Andrea. Andrea Marcusa's work has appeared in Gettysburg Review, Cutbank, River Styx, River Teeth, Citron Review, and others. She's received recognition in a range of competitions, including Glimmer Train, Cleaver, and Smoke Long. She's a member of the faculty at the Writers Studio. Andrea Marcusa.
Thank you, Francine. And Francine, thank you for always making this like fun. You know, there's never any dead space. There's never any like awkward, like, you know, moments. It's not easy to do. And I'm like, you know, I'm in awe. So I'm one of those behind the scenes people. So I'm always happy to be the AV person. Okay, so I'm going to read a story in celebration of Thanksgiving. And if I have two, I have time, I might do two. But and this appeared a while ago in Heavy Feather Review. And if you're a chronic FBOMB person like I am, you've probably heard it before, but it's definitely worth another read. This is called Feast. The double wide steel door clanks shut. I stand next to the man who collected me from the waiting room. We are the only people in the huge elevator. I am naked except for my thin gown. The man barely looks at me. He rolls back on his heels and digs his hands into his khaki pockets. His pants hug his firm backside. He's tall, big-footed too. I open my mouth to say something, but he's already speaking. Here, put this on. He hands me a blue scrub cap. On my head? I slip it on and look down at my gown, cinched at my waist, right above my belly button. They promised I would have a flat stomach, that nothing would show above my bikini line. Sexy, uterusless, an empty space at my Kijang energy gate. What will my bladder think, left there all by itself? Or this fit guy next to me with snug pants and oomph? The doors open and I follow him. We round the corner and then another and enter a long hallway. Why are you making me walk there? The cement floor feels cold on my paper slipper feet. Hospital policy helps patients feel more in control. I get it. The hospital is making me walk to my execution. It's not that bad, he says. An execution of my uterus. It will be a perfect execution. No hysteria anywhere. We reach a set of doors. He opens it for me and holds it until I pass through, then strides ahead. I hurry to fill the gap between us. Are we almost there? Just about. What are you doing for Thanksgiving? Recovering from this. Happy Turkey Day. You? I'm going to my mother. She's having a big crowd. You know, my cousins, my nephews, my brother, my sister, her boyfriend. All from a uterus. One without cancer cells. Once a cozy home for two fetal boy tenants who are now so grown, they're each married to women of their own. Pink, healthy ones. Oh, women with their own, sorry. A typical uterus. I thought I had a typical one until 2 weeks ago. Always when you least expect it. For most of the world, next week will bring a typical Thanksgiving with all the fixings. Today, once they clip, slice, and then pull out my uterus like a baby, it will be just like closing up a turkey without the stuffing. And there's the vaginal cup that they'll sew where the cervix was. Will it be French or button? We arrive at a room. Glass double doors slide open. I'm handed off by a man to a gowned and capped woman. I blink in the bright white light and break out in goosebumps. The woman double checks my name and date of birth. I imagine a smile under her mask, or maybe it's just her eyes that smile. Is it possible for eyes to smile? I want to think so. Sorry it's so cold, she says, as I hug my bare arms. Another mask pats the gurney. Sit here, put your head there. I lie down on the narrow cot. You're this morning's race car, making a pit stop, the masked voice says, as it pulls a sheet over my torso and down to my slippered feet. Soon they'll be working under my hood. A half dozen figures scurry around like every second counts, sticking and strapping things on me. There is a loud whirring. Have I been set in motion? When will I start counting backwards? Or is that only on TV? Everything looks blue under the glare. The room, the gowned figures, caps, something rubbery hovers over my face. I think of all the people passing at Thanksgiving, eating, spooning, stuffing that gaping cavity, carving that gutted bird. Thanks.
Beautiful, Andrea.
I think that's enough. Enough Thanksgiving.
It was beautiful. Where can we find more of your work?
I have a website, andreamarcusa.com, and I'm on Blue Sky, and I'm always on Facebook. And yeah, I think those are, and I'm still on Twitter, but mostly Blue Sky.
Yeah, I'm still hanging on Twitter too, or X, as we're supposed to call it. Who cares what we're supposed to call it? But thank you for being here, and thank you for your help and for your kind words. And I wanted to say that most of the credit for the pace of the reading goes to the readers themselves. Fortunately, we get readers who are like, they have that sense of showmanship. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you for your help as always. Really, you're wonderful. That's Andrea Marcusa. So Now I'm going to move on to Gloria Mindock was supposed to be here. And, Gloria is just such a professional, the consummate professional, but she couldn't be here due to some personal things going on. So, and she let me know that this afternoon. So I asked her if she wanted me to read for her. And so she said, well, I don't have that much fiction, but I have some prose poetry. And I'm making that leap that the FBOMB, that F stands for fiction or flash or who knows what. But anyway, we welcome prose. We welcome all kinds of prose poetry. So I'm going to read for Gloria. And Gloria is the editor of Trevena Barva Press, and there have been people in this very Zoom room who have had books published by her. Author of 6 poetry collections, 2 translations in Romanian and Serbian, and 3 chapbooks. Her poems have been published and translated into 12 languages. Her recent book, Grief Touched by the Sky at Night, Glassliar Press, 2023, won numerous awards. Gloria was the poet laureate in Somerville, Mass. In 2017 and 2018. So I'm going to read from her book, Ash. It's a prose poem in sections, and it's called Plastic. 1. X was only 2 months sober and telling everybody he had a date. Despite being told to concentrate on his sobriety and not women, he would not listen. The next day, he said they went out to dinner. Afterwards, she invited him to her place for coffee. When they walked into her apartment, there were dolls sitting at the kitchen table, on the couch, in the bedroom, and even on the toilet. Doll eyes watching him. Creepy. He left. We all teased him and said he should have kissed a doll. There would be no heart beating. All he would have to do is keep his lips closed. Then there would be no feelings. 2. X was sitting in the car with his date, almost ready to go to dinner, when she said, wait, I have to wrap my head up in tinfoil. It is important for me to communicate with the aliens. X looked at her in disbelief. He took this tinfoil box from her and wrapped his head up with it, waiting for a miracle. 3. It has been a while since X went out on a date. He sat in the car with her as she smacked her gum and then stuck the chewing gum on the dashboard. Then she dug out her lipstick from her purse. X was still focusing on her gum on the dashboard. He looked around her car more closely and saw gum stuck all over the place. He felt a knot in his stomach and was disgusted, got out of the car without saying a word. About a block later, as he was thinking, he reached in his pocket and unwrapped a piece of gum and chewed. 4. The sirens were going off. X knew it was time to get out. His heart was beating quickly. X was scared he would not make it. Heavy black smoke was filling the apartment up. He jumped and realized it was just a dream. Next to him was a woman, young and very pretty. His heart smoldered. He thought, what did I do to deserve such a thing? Just then a fireman knocked down the door and resuscitated him. It was no girl, just a fire hose through the broken window. Sometimes X, a flame, is just a flame. Gloria Mindock. Okay. So next we're going to hear from Brad Rose. Speaking of prose poetry. Brad Rose is the author of 6 collections of poetry and flash fiction, Word and Edgewise, Pink X-Ray, Detonations, Momentary Turbulence, and No, Wait, I Can Explain. His prose poetry has appeared in the American Journal of Poetry, Unbroken, New York Quarterly, Portrait del Sol, Folio, Clockhouse, Lunch Ticket, Cloud Bank, Bending Genres, and over 100 other publications. His website is bradrosepoetry.com. Brad Rose.
Thanks, Francine. I'm always astonished at how much talent there is in the world, and a lot of it is focused here. So thanks for inviting me and tolerating my reading. I'm going to read 3 or 4 one-paragraph pieces. First one is called Back to Your House. Beautiful night tonight, isn't it? I'm out for a stroll. just a short one until something untoward happens. I feel good like a 10-mile snake squeezing under a 9-mile sky, slippery with invisible stripes. As you can see, I'm wearing my class action suit, the one with the power shoulders and the elevator buttons. It's always good to fit in, like a hex nut in a socket wrench. Say, would you mind turning up the subtitles a little? With all this combative hubbub, it's a little hard to tell whether my lips have stopped moving or my scenes have been deleted. Either way, it could be a lesson in disguise. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I noticed that my feet were changing shape, more elliptical and less orthogonal. The good news is that they now look great with whatever I'm wearing. The bad news is that it's harder to find water skis that fit. Fortunately, all my unruly impulses and clumsy urges have subsided. Now I'm gentle as a yam. I hope you don't mind me asking, what nationality are your footprints? Awesome. In that case, I'm sure you won't mind if I walk you home. Peace of mind. On the other capitalist planets, what constitutes an average workday? Of course, the seasons are all out of whack, but fortunately I speak my own language, so it's totally unnecessary to purchase the haphazard invention insurance. Everything is so expensive in this part of the galaxy. Nonetheless, I've still got a happy face, although I am exploring my options in the event of a hapless amusement park accident. Every error automatically creates its own excuse. Yesterday, I was listening to the Junkadelics, and I felt as lucky as an unmarked grave. No, it was okay. I checked with the German government, and they assured me there was a 54% guaranteed chance that no one would get hurt. Peace of mind is priceless, isn't it? That's the reason I challenged myself to a duel, but that's a whole other short story. Of course, achieving a successfully cruel and unusual punishment is more challenging than you might think. But that's why I joined the company union. Money? Who needs it? Bound to happen. The new incubators are far and away better than the old ones. Of course, you'd barely recognize the baby vampires wrapped in all that swaddling, but I'm just trying to capture the low-hanging fruit, before it gets too late in the season. Whenever possible, I try to feed them rarefied goat milk, but I don't have a lot of spare cash lying around to invest in neonatal niceties. In fact, one of the most important lessons that I learned from a previous career in teaching is to teach only lessons that don't have any lesson. That way, you can avoid any unsightly moral pitfalls or potential ethical failings. Like Mrs. Satan used to say to me, lucky things can happen to anyone, so why waste your time trying to be Mr. Nice Guy? I'd hate to go out on a limb here, but don't you ever wonder why we don't see more animals kissing? It's about as rare a sight as snakes on crutches, but I guess in a pinch you can always call an ambulance. It's never too soon to start decluttering before the bodies arrive. Until then, just for stage luck, let's break some legs and bid a fond arrivederci to our posterity, those traitors. Sooner or later, something's bound to happen. The last piece is called A Mind of Their Own. On my way to the fun fair, it's going to be great. Some people say I'm a loose cannon, but I'm just following orders. I like being the dirty kind of clean. Like they say, there's no use writing numbers in alphabetical order. Hey, I just got this new headgear. It fits a little tight, especially around the temples, but it seems to me it helps me to stay in cahoots with myself. You can never have too much of a good thing. This month, my favorite flavor is salt, but I don't like to talk about it too much, not while I'm in transit. Charlene says you can never be too careful, especially when on foot, so I take it slow. Charlene thinks I'm one in a million. She says I'm rare as rattlesnake feet on a stepladder. She's funny that way. Today, I got my lucky sandwich with me. It's in the bag, wrapped in one of those tight little plastic bags, the airtight kind. I always try to get the best results I want. I'm extra careful. I hate to make mistakes. Lord knows I'm not perfect. So I'm extra careful, especially with sidearms. Sometimes, though, they just seem to have a mind of their own. Thank you.
Brad, I always say that I think scientists are probably like just aching to map your brain just to see where it goes from here to there to there to there. It's just
Mhm.
it's so amazing how you do that. It's wonderful. Wonderful trip. Thank you,
Thank
Brad
you.
Rose.
Thanks,
And
Francine.
that's bradrosepoetry.com, correct? Good enough. Yeah, look for more of Brad's work. You will not be disappointed. Thank you, Brad Rose, for being here with us tonight. All right. Gary Fink. Gary Fink's latest collection is The History of the Baker's Dozen, Pelicanesis 2024. His long-form story collections have won the Flannery O'Connor Prize, the Elixir Press Fiction Prize. He's co-editor of the annual anthology Best Microfiction. And thank you so much for that, Gary. And we are all very appreciative of that. Gary Fink.
Thanks, Francine. There's about 10 more days for editors to submit the best microfiction. So in case there's any editors here, Meg and I are looking for work. I'm going to read two fairly short pieces and then one very, very short pieces. This first one, I want to thank a student. I still, even though I retired about 7 years ago from Susquehanna and the program that I founded, I still go back every fall and mentor 3 or 4 students who have senior projects. And this young woman was writing nonfiction about making money by soliciting, and people paid to see her feet. So she was a foot fetish. Anyway, it was irresistible. This story is called Beauty. When Shelley gets to college, she learns that money is as necessary as her half of a room and prepaid cafeteria meals, that most of her classmates used money like air and water repeatedly without thinking, expecting the same from everyone else, including her. Sure, there was menial work available in the cafeteria with a maintenance crew, or a bit better, as a clerk in the library or department office. But at minimum wage, Shelley shelved books and updated magazines for 3 months without changing anything. 2 weeks' wages spent in one day. She heard about the escorts scattered among older students. She didn't have the body, she thought, or the face, or the indecency. But she remembered how often her feet were praised, how when she wore sandals, someone would say, "You're so cute down there with your painted toenails and smooth skin." She could model, a job that had potential. An entrepreneur now, she made a portfolio. She submitted her feet. For a week, she expected agencies to contact her, or Etsy sellers who needed promotion, shoe companies, podiatry websites, some site besides the ones popular with creeps. For another month, she waited. She used that time to investigate. If only the weird would pay for her feet, she needed to be sure they never found her. Anonymous wasn't a perk. Sure, the site charged a 20% fee on all her sales, but it didn't require an ID, something even protected, impossible to perfectly secure, even with an anonymous email and only digital payments. She trimmed her toenails. She practiced poses, the varieties of color and design, glitter, the ways to seduce and please, how much to charge. If she resisted additional exposure, she was selling such a small part of herself that it wasn't like selling at all, no different than cleaning up after the rich and careless. Souls were desired, close-ups, spread toes were admired, arches sexy, curves created when she stood on her toes, or her feet in heels, one sleek shoe dangling near jewelry, flowers or lit candles set along a marble floor. Her mother had always said, "Show your best side." There were men who hungered for exactly that. They paid to dream, leaving her untouched and unknown. She would never tell on herself, not this beauty she'd become, the best part of her adored. These stories are from the book that Francine mentioned, The History of the Baker's Dozen. This one's called Shadowing the Gravedigger. Because the gravedigger agreed when Jack asked to ride with him, Jack is in his truck waiting for a midwinter funeral to finish. I keep my distance, the gravedigger says. He shifts his body to expose more of his window, leans back as if he expects Jack to calculate the yards between them and the gathering by the grave. To show respect, Jack is wearing a topcoat instead of a hooded sweatshirt. It nearly covers his jeans. The funeral is in blue and white, the team colors of the university where Jack is a senior. There are enlarged photographs of football teams, all of them too distant for faces, names, or years. At the end of the just completed season, the university's team had suffered a devastating bowl game loss. Jack's father had watched the game on television. Twice he called to tell Jack the score. It's a close one, he'd said both times, leaving that message on Jack's voicemail. The windows fog the funeral away, and the gravedigger does not rub his side window or any part of the windshield clear. He says, you never want to park too close, so you learn how far away is necessary to be discreet. He taps the dashboard, and for damn sure, he adds, never play the radio. When Jack asks about the difficulty of his work in winter, the gravedigger says there are times he has shoveled by hand for infants and the cremated, holes too small for the oversized spade of machinery. For those, weather is important. The earth, if frozen, is a bitch. The funeral, by now, is invisible. When the gravedigger goes quiet, Jack looks straight ahead, breathes a small cloud, and remembers. Below zero it was the day his mother was buried, backhoe visible on a nearby rise, mound of earth covered by something designed to look like summer sod. The minister labored at turning January into meaning, snow and zero entwined until everyone at the graveside chorused the chilled amen of erasure. His father had stood by himself at a distance, like a visitor. By the time Jack and his mother's sister had thanked the minister for being willing to hold part of the brief service outside, his father was gone. Out loud, but nearly whispering, Jack tells the gravedigger he has watched recently as an urn was laid into a grave behind a local church. The girl was a suicide, the mother a neighbor, the father in another state. Their one surviving daughter, the same age as Jack, shoveled soil while the minister recited a prayer everyone could follow by reading a printed program. When he reached the bottom of the page, Jack felt like shrieking. The minister invited everyone to a covered dish lunch. Jack sat with a small plate of untouched food, as if an uneaten sandwich could stand in for a phrase of sympathy. The gravedigger nods and wipes his side window clear. The small crowd has begun their retreat to roadside cars. A woman is carrying the oversized photographs. Two men have easels in their arms. A child must be the most difficult, Jack tries. And the gravedigger says that he's opened and closed the earth for his father, that now his mother has entered hospice. Jack muffles the remainder of his experiences until they are smothered. Whatever you can bear, the gravedigger says, and he opens his door, the weather rushing inside the truck, reminding Jack to follow. And this last one is literally a 100-word story, and a couple weeks ago it came up at their sight. It's called subsidence. It's not the end of the world, fallout covering homeowners in the housing plan built over long closed mines, firestorm and shockwave making refugees of survivors. It's not a cancer cluster among families measuring themselves by mortgages that outlive them. It's not an apocalypse, the cinder block cracked where corners of their houses keel over like drunks. It's my father inside the fire hall, huddled with his neighbors. It's his hands straightening the map where his modest street shows so large he believes it's a river. It's closed circuit news, my watching when he walks his hallway, measuring slope with his body, leaning. Thanks for listening.
Oh, beautiful, Gary. It's really wonderful. Yeah, so we can find you pretty much everywhere, Gary. It's not just so much to be prolific, but you get published an awful lot, so which is amazing, and well deserved. So where else can we find your work? You have a website you can look
Yeah,
at?
I'm on Instagram at
Okay.
Gary Fincke, and I'm on Facebook. I started a Blue Sky thing, but I haven't done anything. I'll wait.
Yeah,
till
it's like a
if my
slow burn,
daughter
I think.
shows up, I'll get her to post some things.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. And your newest collection is The History of the Baker's Dozen, you said? That's your
I'm
newest
sorry, what?
collection? Your newest
Yeah.
collection?
Yeah, from last summer.
Wonderful. Yes, you're wonderfully prolific that way too. So congratulations. And thank you for being here with us, Gary. Gary Fincke. Okay, moving right along. We just have a few readers left. Hope everybody's having fun. I'm having fun. This is next we're going to hear from Lucinda Kempe. Lucinda Kempe's work has been published or is forthcoming in New Flash Fiction Review, Centaur, The Disappointed Housewife, Unbroken Journal, New South Journal, Southampton Review, and the Somerset Review. An excerpt of her memoir was shortlisted for the Fish Memoir Prize in April 2021, nominated for the Best of the Net in 2024 by Boudin Magazine, the McNeese Review. Lucinda Kempe.
Whoa, gosh, do I have the energy to read this now? Thank you so much for asking me to read. It was lovely hearing everybody. We need language. We need it now more than ever. I'm going to read a page of a story that I wrote this summer, and then I have two micros. And this was birthed in a prompt from Francine's pop-up prompt. Rats breed like the New Yorker magazine. The troubles began with a watermelon she brought home from a road trip. The watermelon came from Texas via New Orleans via Highway 87 North. She and her Greek husband arrived home intact. Overall, the trip had been a success. They ate a lot of gumbo, drank a lot of wine, went to the Bayou St. John Farmers Market where they got the melon and jars of pickled okra and beets. However, their sex life hadn't improved. One half-hearted attempt embarrassed them both, but they used it as an excuse to have extra floating island at Café Degas. Upon their return, they butchered half the melon on the 5th of July. When she went to put the leftovers in the woods for her ring-tailed friends, she spied a phalanx of rats sambaing amongst the compost and the literature. The New Yorkers she'd been discarding in the yard had provided asylum for the wildlife. She hated throwing away chow, even bad fare like the mac and cheese pizza her children regularly consumed, which she gave to the furry disposal as soon as her kids weren't looking. It's a wonder y'all can shit, she'd tell them, something her kids ignore. As for the magazines, well, she couldn't toss literature in the garbage. It would be like throwing John Cheever into the trash. She rummaged through New Yorker archives to read his old stories. A magazine that had published Cheever could not be relegated to the town landfill. Better let it decompose naturally. She'd tried asking the local library if they'd take the burgeoning copies, but they said, "This is too outre for us. No thanks." Along with the New Yorker and Wildlife and her ancient rescue cat, roughage was her life. Wheat berries, red cabbage, prunes, radicchio, and pistachios kept her guts happy. Nothing like having offspring to mess up your anatomy. The crap flew out of her sphincter every morning. Earlier, she'd stepped in one of her own turds and tracked it through the foyer into the kitchen, necessitating a complete washdown of her own footsteps. What the hell was happening? She was losing control of her shit. Her natural recyclers could no longer be fed. She was having a hard time sleeping, while horrible kid fuel rotted in the garbage along with wipers smeared with her own excrement and cat vomit. Life was a stinking hell of tainted food, ravenous wildlife, decaying literature, an expiring pet who retched every other day, usually on her bed. Imperative you should know. Every June for 47 years, the black rotary phone rang and my mother rocked the cradle. Her liquid voice stopped me cold. "You hanged yourself in your bedroom in your mama's house, except mama lied, said you'd used a gun, believe the lie, less gruesome. June, and I'm counting towards you. The 9th, 1974, I was 15. Though I hardly knew you, the day suspends in present tense, despite the past, like a prehistoric fern in amber. Amber is the color of gold. It is beautiful, resin. I'm coated in the color of you, of the memory of your leaving, of your departure. I understand the desperation. I've been sad too. Sometimes the dolor embraces me like a handsome killer, one I dream about, striking like you, the man with eyes as blue as my blonde-headed dolls, a poet, an actor, a painter, and a schizophrenic. I'm the only child of an only son. You lie in St. Roch Cemetery behind a vault with its closed eye. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. And I have one last short one, just published at Gooseberry Pie by the lovely Jeff Harvey. Last chair sitting. The Botaka saw the world explode, leaving it the last chair sitting. It sat in a garden empty of people and pets, with not another kind of fur or skin-covered creature around. Just dust and rocks and exposed tree roots twisted grotesquely. If the Botaka could have, it would have liked to say it was sorry for this present state of disarray. But the Botaka didn't have language. It had a sling-back spine and flat arms of Cuban mahogany, and had been made 200 years ago by a Creole cabinet maker in New Orleans, who loved his work so much he brought it home to his family instead of selling it in his store on Bourbon Street. He sat in it at night with his wife in her chair and the children on the floor at their feet, in a small but tidy and beloved parlor of a small beloved house, a shotgun, in an uptown neighborhood where the neighbors had greeted each other on their stoops in a regularly recurring ritual of civility.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lucinda. And that was just such a perfect example of why it's so much fun to listen to the stories as well as read them. It just adds that extra layer. It's like, when you hear the writer read their story, it really just brings it even more to life. You hope it lives on the page, but it adds that extra layer, that extra oomph, and you certainly gave it that. So thank you, Lucinda.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Lucinda Kempe. Next, we're going to hear from someone who I had the pleasure of being on a panel at AWP with. He was the leader of the panel. And that was like, I guess I hate the word bucket list, but that was kind of a bucket list if you have to say that. But so I've done it, never have to do it again. But it was really a kick and I really appreciated it. And really nice gentleman. David Galef has published over 15 books including the novel Flesh, the short story collection My Date with Neanderthal Woman, and Brevity, a flash fiction handbook. He runs the creative writing program at Montclair State University. He's also the editor-in-chief at Vestal Review, which is just a wonderful, venerable publication. It's the longest-running flash fiction magazine on the planet. David Galef. Yes, sorry. I'll get it eventually. David Galef.
Thank you, Francine. Especially the Galef. It gets mispronounced all the time, including Galef, which is, of course, Yiddish for thief. In any event, thank you very much. I'm going to read one piece. It qualifies as flash because it's well under 1,000 words, but it's not several. So it's called Excuses. After the 5th time, Jamie showed up late to English 200. Ms. Stepper told him to stay afterward. He'd arrived at 9:30, patting his jean pockets as if making sure he hadn't lost anything. Awkwardly tall, he looked around the circumference of desk chairs, then walked to the back of the room where only dust collected. Seated, he began some complicated variation on thumb twiddling, looking everywhere but at Miss Stepper. He hadn't done the reading, as even a casual question showed. What made a case like Jamie's doubly annoying was that before the absences started piling up like overdue bills, Jamie had sat in front and volunteered that the setup in one story seemed, quote, kind of preachy at the end. During the first in-class response, he'd finished early but not left the room. Yet 3 weeks in, Jamie arrived 15 minutes after the bell. He slouched in his seat and looked as if he'd caught himself performing some unsavory deed. Earlier on, Miss Stepper had addressed the issue. "Nice of you to grace us with your presence," she told Jamie, echoing an old teacher of hers, Mrs. Whittaker, who used words like behoove and nonetheless. Still, teachers like Mrs. W., who achieved results by prodding her students, were why Miss Stepper had pursued a teacher ed major in college. She dropped out during a bout of depression when just getting out of bed had been such a chore that she kept the covers over her head for hours. But she'd managed, as Mrs. W. would have said, to buck up and stick the course. In any event, Jamie didn't respond to her jibe, but just nodded. He glanced around as if something had followed him into the classroom. The tardiness, a Mrs. W. term, had persisted. So had the lack of preparation. When called upon, Jamie just shrugged guiltily. Perhaps Jamie was something like herself at that age, clever but insecure, behind a veneer of confidence. So when she asked him to stay after class, and finally had him standing in front of her, she had an approach. She didn't offer him a chair, but instead stared at him for a few beats to unsettle him. "So, what's going on, Jamie?" He tried to twiddle his thumbs, but it didn't work well when he was standing. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. You started the semester so promisingly. You participated. Then you started coming in late and unprepared." Jamie's hands came apart, as if having weighed something too heavy. "Come on, I'm not going to bite." Another Mrs. W-ism. "I really want to know." Jamie squared his shoulders, then slumped again. "Look, I don't like talking about this, but my uncle's a drug addict. Been in and out of prison. I can show you the records." "I'm sorry to hear it." Miss Stepper acknowledged the news with a nod. "And your connection to him is?" Jamie looked half disgusted, half resigned. "He's got a job again, in his own place, across town." "Well, I'm glad that—" "Yeah, but I'm the one who's got to go see him before he heads to work. I pat him down, search the apartment for drugs every morning." Jamie's latest shrug was unconvincing. "I kind of hate it. Takes a lot of time." Miss Stepper moved back, a palpable expanse now hanging between her and her student. "That's a lot of responsibility. Can't anyone else do it?" Jamie shook his head. "I'm the only one in the family he trusts." "I see." Miss Stepper sighed. "So you're always going to be late for class?" A wan smile. "I'll do what I can, Miss Stepper." You'll have to do better than that, said Mrs. W. All right, do what you can. I can give you a little leeway. Jamie gestured, for what we have received, and left. The dust motes and the rays of the late afternoon sun settled on the desk and the much trampled floor. Miss Stepper opened her laptop to compose a message to the guidance counselor. It was worded in the Mrs. W style. Jamie was at risk. Strong measures needed to be taken. She was in the middle of her final sentence when she rolled up her sleeves. The track marks on her left arm looked like a line of angry red points at the end of a statement, a testament to a mother and her toxic boyfriend who'd been hooked on several substances and believed in sharing. Only stubbornness and a naive ingenuity had helped her up and out like an escape artist freeing themselves from handcuffs. She'd clawed her way back to school, got her degree, and snared this job at McCain High, where she'd been ever since. She'd been clean for 10 years now, though some mornings she had to slap herself. Those Nar-Anon homilies about loving herself were counterproductive. So when Jamie didn't show up for the next class and came 50 minutes late for the one after that, she didn't welcome him back. When he raised a hand, she pointedly looked elsewhere. He stopped coming after that, the desk in the back gathering dust again. Ms. Stepper didn't pursue the case, and counseling never followed up. At the end of the semester, she hesitated only a moment before awarding him an F. She thought about writing the matter to Mrs. W., who'd remained a sort of confessor figure, but her old teacher had died last month in an assisted living facility, requesting to be cremated. Miss Stepper had seen the urn. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But surely there was a better way to phrase it. Thank you very much.
That is awesome, David. And also another very animated, lively reading. Thank you. And where can we read more of your work? Are you on Facebook? Are you on...
I run a magazine. I'm everywhere.
Okay.
We're trying to persuade people to go from Twitter to Blue Sky, but Facebook,
That takes some time, yeah.
Instagram. And I've got a website, so the usual.
Great. What's your website?
davidgalef.com or something like that.
Couldn't be easier. Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you, David Galef, for being with us tonight on FBOMB. Okay, our final reader tonight is Barbara Westwood Diehl. She's a senior editor of the Baltimore Review. Her short stories and poems have appear in a variety of publications, most recently as the second place winner of Midway Journal's Flash Prose and Poetry Contest. And that's a pretty good contest to have placed in. So, Barbara Westwood Diehl.
Thank you, Francine. The piece I'm going to read is, I guess, a prose poem. It was written in response to a telephone project assignment. I don't know if anyone's heard of the telephone project, but it's this huge ekphrastic arts project which goes around the globe to like hundreds and hundreds of artists of various kinds, visual artists, painters, dancers, sculptors, musicians, anyway. So I was given a piece of music to respond to. And that's very different for me because I usually don't write in response to music. So it was a cool experience. And so if it sounds like there's some music influence here, well, that's why. Cantata for Children in the Woods. Silent sacristy, emptied vestry, a filing of children into the choir loft, quiet prayer or fumbling for prayer, a slipping of sheet music under choir rails and under polished brown shoes, like a swirl of maple seeds and a crackle of oak leaves, a single organ note, a snap to attention, a draft of cold air from a stained glass window, a shudder of wings and sun. We are the children. We tune ourselves to ourselves. We sing a note, sing a note, sing a note, sing a note, sing a note. We are alto, soprano, and sometimes caesura. We sing warbles and trills when we want to break open notes like cottonwood pods, turn the black quarter notes into puffs of white seed. Some of our voices crack. Some of us hum. Some of us move our lips when we don't have the words in our head or notes in our throat.
Fledglings flown from the nests turn to feather and fur. We pretend to read music when sharps and flats and beats per bar are a foreign language. When the songs inside us are solos that are lost and far and from home and lonely, in need of accompaniment, the kind pianist of rain through pine needles. Beyond the stained glass, the woods. Our voices slip through the glass broken away from lead solder, and the sound is a long river of waterfalls, like the time we rubbed a finger around the rim of a water glass at a wedding, like that time. Water sings, glass sings. In the woods, the pine sings to the stream. The stream sings to tadpoles and peepers, and the dragonflies skittering across the water like the stones in our pockets, only better. The stones in our pockets under the surplice, under the cassock, sing to the stones in the stream in the woods. The stones spirit us through the sanctuary, through the narthex, through the vestibule, and down the steps, and through the cemetery to the woods, where life is hopping with webbed feet and moving with stealth and grace on four legs, and slithering out of its skins and flexing tails and fins, and winging through wind and eating and drinking and living, living, living. We leave the choir loft and peel the sheet music from our voices. We leave the vestry a jumble of choir robes and silver crosses on ribbons in all the liturgical colors. Because we don't live by church year seasons. We live by the seasons of mud and snowballs and berries and sunburn. We are the parents. We are the choir masters. Come back, come back, come back. We are the makers of sirens and alarms, of ringtones and text messages, of the timers beeping, of batons rapping on music stands, of written instructions, of translations. We have all the words. We have terminology. We are history and caution. We are your rap on the knuckles, the swat on your backside, for your own good. Because I'm your mother, that's why. Because wait till your father comes home. Because I'm in charge, that's why. Because I said so. Come back, come back, come back. Find me, find me, find me, catch me, catch me, catch me. We have no names for this world, so we make them up. Gods and avatars and action figures made of sticks and mud and cockleburrs. A universe of rock planets and gain levels that go on forever. You don't know the name, so you can't find me, you can't find me, you can't find me, and you can't catch me. I am the woods. I give the choir my blades of grass for whistles, sticks and stones for bongo drums, water for xylophones, dry pine for snare drums. I give them breath to whoop and crow. I give them the metronome of bird call and pecking, and the pendulum of the sun and the dappling and undappling of paths. We are the children who left the woods so long ago. We are the children who broke the woods, but the woods came back. Where were the woods? We have forgotten. We are lost and alone, and neither accompany nor accompaniment. We are sheet music without a song. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? We are the Peter Pan woods, the Pied Piper woods, the Hansel and Gretel woods. Some children love us for a little while. Our wooden swords, our grass whistles, our buried houses. The woods love them back. Some children leave us. Some children forget us and live in your house of sirens and alarms, of commandments and kneeling benches. And some will leave you and be a symphony of their own. We are the woods. We are the neverland of never forgetting. We are the baritone as the light goes, as the light goes, the light goes, light goes. A last amen. Thank you.
Beautiful. That was so musical. That really was a piece of music in words. I think it's fascinating that, that you were influenced by music for that. Not exactly sure how you approached that, and how did you find your way into that? Like, what was it about the music that you took into that piece? That I'm putting you on the spot, I know.
Oh, wow, it's like how do we look at a painting and do an ekphrastic poem from a painting? But yeah, music was so hard, so I just had to try visually. I played it on listening, going for walks and listening to it, and eventually this image of the woods and children and
I see,
and rhythms and repetition. So
yeah, because it sounds like a fascinating project, process. And
it is pretty cool.
I asked
look up
because
the telephone project. It's cool.
Yeah, I sort of anticipated that everybody wanted to know. So thank you, Barbara. Barbara Westwood.
Thank you.
Diehl. Lovely work. Okay, well, that brings us to the close of our reading. And I want to thank our wonderful readers, Laura Weiss, Joanna Theiss, Swetha Amit, Mikki Aronoff, Andrea Marcusa, Gloria Mindock, who's not here, but I read for her, Brad Rose, Gary Fincke, Lucinda Kempe, David Galef, and Barbara Westwood Diehl. Thank you so much. And thank you to those of you in the Zoom room for listening, and for those of you watching on YouTube. And I always like to say at the end of the reading, drive safely. This is Francine Witte in New York City. Good night.